Welcome back, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it's a new month. Are we going to do this? Here we are.
We're doing it.
Great.
No, it's your thing now. It's you can't get out.
Oh, no.
I could probably back out of mine. I don't think anybody would care. They'd be like, that's a weird brand for Taylor to have.
It's a weird brand for me. Welcome back, y'all.
I love it.
I have started saying y'all because of it. I'm like, oh, gosh, here we go. That's how fast culture catches. There you go.
Is that what we're talking about today? Is that it? Did you just segue?
No. Oh. No, but I mean, we're always talking about that, right? Culture catches.
Yeah, that's true.
It happens fast.
Yeah.
Don't mess it up.
We're talking about this, like, it's not my job.
Yes.
Today, right? So this idea, people are like, it's not my job.
Yeah. Y'all is not my job. Okay.
Yeah. And what it really means when people do the minimum. So we're going to dig into what's actually happening from a culture perspective when that's the mindset, the mentality, and it's so pervasive. And we're going to fix it. So as always, people are going to walk away with something they can do right now to fix the "that's not my job" mentality in your business, in your culture, with your team. If that's your mentality, for anyone listening, let's fix that as well. Do you have a question before we dive in?
Obviously.
All right, let's do it.
One of our clients this week was like, oh, Christine and her stupid questions.
I feel that way every time.
Every day.
Yeah.
So my question is, oh gosh, I forgot my question because we were talking about the question. No, my question is, what do you think actually creates this within our team?
Oh no, this is hard.
I know.
Like,
or our teams, like we have a few, but within our teams.
So like somebody that works with us says like, that's not my job. What creates that?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to admit that happens on our side.
Okay. So here's the reason why I ask it. I don't think that I was trying to think of a time that someone on our teams lately, like, and it might have had to be like a while ago. I don't think anyone currently on our team does this. But I think the time that I actually have heard it is from us. Like, not that it's like, that's not my job. We're like, that's not their job. Like, you tell me that occasionally because I'm like, this person should do this. And you're like, that's not their job. And so I'm like, okay, so like we protect our people's time, but what creates this on our teams? Because it has been there, like occasionally. I mean, Taylor's usually like, that's not my job, you guys. I'm not going to do it. I'm just kidding. Like, Taylor, stay in your damn lane. Okay. We got it. I'm going to do it. And then I don't. And I drop the ball and you're like, this is why I have to do it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, like, it doesn't have to be from our team right now, but I think because I literally can't think of a time our team has done this, but we chose this topic, or this topic came up because it does happen. We talk to our clients about it a lot. But what do you think creates it? Like, what are the things that we have done that have created this mentality within our organizations?
I think it stems from a lack of ownership or not seeing a clear path to ownership when it comes to some specific task, right? So if there's no clear directive, if there's no clear understanding of how that input influences the trajectory of a team or an organization, then I think it's really easy to be, that's not my job. And I think also what that says is the assumption that someone else is just going to pick up the slack versus a real commitment to moving things forward collectively, assuming the best in other people, So I think there's a few different facets there, but I think ownership is really kind of at the core. And I think when we create cultures that are owner minded, and rooted in ownership, people recognize that the sum total of the collective effort is what we're focused on, more than individual input. Not that people's specific jobs aren't important, but like, one day maybe I'll do more than you, or you do, like everybody has these days of like high output, and where like you're the one that did the big ticket thing that moved the needle. And so I think when it's like, oh, it's not my job, there's a piece of that too, where if it feels maybe unimportant, or it feels like it's not something that's going to add like cumulatively to the collective output. I think there's a mindset shift of like, oh, like actually everything matters and everything is moving us forward, whether that's sending an email or following up with a client, or sending, the biggest proposal that you've ever had, or the big client, they're all really in a lot of ways, I think they're all really equal, right? There's no like small job.
No.
I think there is certainly small mindsets and small mentality around that, but yeah, I think there's this kind of push and pull, and there's a balance of needing to quote unquote stay in your lane. What's your genius zone? What's your highest and best? We talk about that a lot. There's a piece of that there, but then in the mix, there is, I think, just needs to be a willingness to take ownership over what moves things forward. And if it is or isn't in your job description, or it's maybe not the thing you want to do, or maybe even the highest and best use of your time, like sometimes you just do it. Like, I mean, any number of circumstances, right? Like, I think, I don't know. I try to do that. I try to in real time think about just like what's the best for the greater good and for our shared goals, and less about like, is that my job, or is that above or below me, or is that like, I'm just like, I'll just do it. Like, I'm kind of happy to do anything. I might be grumpy about it. It might seem inconvenient at the time where I'm like, I got a million things going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really want to like, follow up with this person, or fit, like maybe that's somebody else's, specifically their job, but that person's like, has input in some other thing, or like the timeline. I just don't think I think we get bogged down in that. I think largely it doesn't matter. And I think I didn't mention this. I think it has to be rooted in ego too.
Yeah. Ego is insecurity, right? We've talked about this a lot. And so I think we see that. And it's interesting because my daughter started a new job this week. Her career. I will stand corrected. And she went into nursing. She's a CNA. But she said that the night shift has this like incredible culture where everybody helps each other. Mm-hmm. And she said the day shift has this culture where like you can ask for help on the channel, but nobody's going to help you. And I was like, well, what's the difference? Why do you think there's a difference? And she was like, well, I think the difference is that there's so many people on day shift that everyone expects someone else to do it. Mm. Like, oh, like someone else will do it. They're closer to that floor unit or whatever. And so I think that like you hit a couple key things is like people don't understand when they're actually needed. And I think there's like an insecurity in that, which creates like ego. And there's just like, I think there's like buzz stuff too. I don't think we've experienced that on our team. We have amazing people. But I think that I've heard that a lot, like, oh, that's outside my pay grade. Mm-hmm. I don't get paid enough for that. And I'm like, oof. And I think that there is like leaders overwork people. And so it becomes a mentality. I wouldn't say that team tell us. I wouldn't say that we do that. Like we try to manage that. So, I think it's important to understand. I always think it's important to understand the why. You know that I love why. I'm like a 5-year-old. I'm like, why? Why? But in our culture, I do look at it. I'm like, why is this happening? Like, why? What? on night shift makes it not happen, and what on day shift does make it happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I believe it's important to start with why. If you have a leader that's acting in this way, that has not my job mentality, then like start with why. I think that's kind of where this conversation starts. But since you couldn't really answer my question, no, I'm just kidding, because we don't have it. I'm just kidding. I'll be a little spicy today. Let's go ahead and get into it. So yeah, when people have the mentality of doing the minimum, everything else kind of falls through the crack and it fails because it just doesn't work, right? It doesn't create a team environment. And so, Taylor, why is this important? But like, better yet, like, what are the red flags to look for here? And what does this look like? Like, when we think about this mindset, what are the red flags here? What is it actually saying about the leaders in our organization that have this?
When that is said, what that signals is a few things. So let's just take that specific phrase, like not my job. Can also insert, like you said, above my pay grade or blah, blah, blah. What it signals, like I said, lack of ownership. And again, that's a disconnect between the input, which is work, and how that input informs or impacts the greater trajectory or the larger goal, or we would refer to that as the mission and the vision.
Totally.
And next, what it signals. So again, what that phrase tells us inside of an organization is it signals low engagement. So people are just literally like, they're not engaged enough to care to do the thing. They're like, I don't know, and I'll wait until somebody forces me to do it, or like sends me the directive, there's a lack of initiative there, which means there's low engagement, which means there's low productivity. And that also means that there's low or efficiency is suffering in the organization as well. Efficiency is important. We've talked about that a lot, but like speed and efficiency matter, right? To the if you can do things faster and more efficiently, you're flattening the time to success, which means it's costing you less money, service more people, so on. So,
well, that sounds sexy. I like that.
Yeah, we like to move fast.
Less money, more speed, more impact.
Better, faster, go. What do you say?
Do a better, faster, go. That's how we do that? I like that.
Yeah.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, see. And then the other thing that it signals is that it signals an eroding culture. It signals that at a foundational level, your culture of your organization is not strong. Because if you have low engagement, if you have a lack of ownership, these are foundational and fundamental pieces of a strong culture. So that phrase really signals and gives us a lot of insight into a pretty scary underbelly of the culture, what's really going on at this foundational level. And it's not good. And it spreads really fast. So one person gets that mentality. If that mentality is perpetuated and allowed in a sense to go on, i.e. the culture is not brought back together and realigned, then the next person sees that, I can get away with that. Yeah, okay, sure, I'll take a back seat. And then we hire from that place, right? And then it really starts to escalate very, very quickly. So that's what that looks like. That's why it's a red flag, and not just we hear that all the time. No, it has very real meaning, and there's a real impact there, and it's pretty ugly. And again, it starts to erode things really quickly. So with that in mind, let's talk about how we shift that. So ownership is the key piece. Let's use that as kind of the key language to describe what we're trying to accomplish. So moving from that's not my job to a culture of ownership. How do we build ownership? So what can we teach people to do to really in real time make some change to right the ship?
Yeah. It's, it really does start with training, and it starts with the experience people have with our culture out of the gates. And so you should be thinking about this in every step of the training process: hiring, onboarding, training, and the growth impact plan for your people. And so one of the biggest things I think is, do we have a culture of solving problems? Are we teaching leaders within our organization to be problem solvers versus waiting for solutions to be given to them? And so one of the things that I think is really important and like a mindset that we can encourage our people with is, how can I solve this? Instead of like, it's not my job, how can I solve this? I think that like you're standing in front of a client, and instead of saying like, I don't know, it's not my job, I don't have the key, I don't have the button, I don't have this. It's just like, how can I solve this? And then walking the client through that process. And I think the communication follows this. I think a lot of times I watch young leaders. I was at a coffee shop the other day and like something happened, whatever it was. And like, you just kind of see he was, I'm going to pull the generation card right now. He was a Gen Z, and you could tell that he was struggling to communicate whatever the expectation shift was. And so I think it's thinking about, how can I solve this? And then communicating that effectively with everyone involved, whether that's a fellow teammate or a peer or the client or vendor, whatever the case is. Like, who needs to know about this? How, like, if it's shifted, we ran into that issue with one of the companies we were working with. It's like, you need a plan B, and you just need to have it set up. And then like, you have to actually communicate with the people involved. And so I think there's something really big about just having this mentality and then communicating, teaching your team how to communicate from that place and being problem solvers. Are we problem solvers in this organization? And thinking about like, who else does that impact? I think are like the first two things. And then the other thing that I have seen, or we have seen really help, is, what do you want someone to do if the roles were reversed? Mm-hmm. I think so. And, I talk about this a lot, but one of the core shifts in one of our organizations, service-based company, and we just once a month have the field workers come into the office and work a shift, and we have the office team go into the field and work a shift. And so I think a lot of times asking yourself and putting yourself in that other person's shoes is so important, but that's what creates true understanding and true empathy. Because if you don't understand what that person is dealing with, then you can't actually make a impactful solution. You can't understand an impactful solution if you don't understand what they're going through and you don't understand that reverse role. And I think that's why the show Undercover Boss was so impactful. Mm. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah.
I know you and I don't watch a lot of TV, but that show is very interesting, and there was, real changes made. I think that it was like a drop in the bucket, but I think if we bake this into our process and we have this mentality of like, what is this other person going through? Can I understand why this is happening? Just instead of being like, it's not my job, or they're not a hard worker, or whatever the case is. I think that's really, really important. And then reinforce it and give feedback within each one of these phases, right? Like, we're always having to give feedback. And so I think that is like a huge part of it, is just giving people feedback in real time and like keeping that line of communication open, I think is super important. So, there's all of these culture-baked strategies, right? Like these things that we bake in that are just like, this is how we're thinking about it. This is how we're going to try to be proactive about it. But Taylor, like, if I have a leader that is in this problem, and I'm a leader of an organization, I have someone or a few people on my team that I keep hearing, that's not my job. And like, we've seen people get really kind of nasty with this. Like that's, they get very entitled. I would say, I don't like to use that word a lot, but I think there is like an entitlement here. That's not my job. That's above my pay grade. We already have this. When do we address it head on? How do you know when you just need to push on some of the softer metrics and the things that are just baked in? And when do you actually address it head on? Because I think ignoring the problem can be like ignoring cancer in your culture. You're just like perpetuating a blow up and it just never works.
I think when to address it is early and often. So I think that's the first piece of this is to not let it go on. I think if it's said, truthfully at all, I think it's something that needs to be addressed. And there is a way to coach people who are defaulting to avoidance. And that's really what we're talking about here, is that their default is not ownership, but avoidance. This is also, I love that we're going here, because this is so much a part of like what you and I believe in when it comes to leadership development in general. Is like, it has to be something that you can, when this happens, like, what do I do? Right. So it's not just like a nice to have or like a fluffy high level, existential conversation. Like, these things will happen. And it could be, somebody having a bad day, or it could be your culture's not moving in the right direction. But either way, at any instance, or either instance, it needs to be addressed. That really is a coaching opportunity from leadership to the other individual, from whoever it's happening, because it also happens at the leadership level, from leader to leader. So this is not just in a hierarchical org chart. This can certainly happen, in a flat org chart as well. But what that sounds like is to use language that recognizes where they're at and also invites them into ownership. So an example of that is, I recognize that this is outside of your usual role, but here's why it matters, and here's why I think you're the right person for the job, or here's why I'd like you to step up to the plate or step up in this way in this particular instance, because I think that you have a skill set and have a particular level of clarity on this particular objective that I think is really going to add value, right? Again, what you're doing is you're helping people see a clear through line from where they're at to how their input, specifically that extra input in quotes, equals something meaningful. If you just like put something on somebody's plate and they're already busy, then that's going to be really hard for them to see without some sort of explanation or some sort of clear through line. So again, using language, recognizing where they're at, and then helping them see how their input adds up to something that's actually meaningful versus just a waste of time. Another example of that is, hey, like, I hear you, but we're really focused on solving problems here. How would you approach this? So I realize this is out of scope, or maybe this is kind of out of left field, or this isn't maybe congruent with what any of our daily kind of work looks like. Great. But knowing that we focus on solving problems here, knowing that we're not interested in passing the buck or doing anything less than our best, how would you approach this? And again, it's an invitation to help that individual see how their input and expertise actually creates ownership in their role, which then stacks towards the kind of greater good, so to speak. So those are a couple of examples of what that language can sound like in an opportunity where coaching or supporting that individual, that person who, again, is defaulting to avoidance, can actually just help them rewire and reset and look forward and actually, again, you want to kind of squash this. It's not something that you want to let persist. And so getting ahead of it. And when you hear that, anything like that, using language like I just described is really, you want to lead with that.
Yeah. And I think leading with that, with being in a state of curiosity too, I think is really important, because we can, especially if this isn't typical behavior for this person. I think anytime that you are going head on at anything, leading with asking questions is something that's super important too. Like, hey, is there, like, I noticed that you're showing up in this way. Can you tell me more about that and like why that is and how we got here? Right. And like, leading with questions, I think, is another one that you and I have found very helpful, because if you come in and you're like, this is not an okay mentality, nobody's listening. Now we're just defending ourselves. And so I think, there could be reasons why the person has shifted into a protective state or insecurity or whatever that is. So lead with curiosity so that you can understand why this is happening first. And then some of these tools is like, they'll change the game.
Mm-hmm. You know what's next?
Leadership challenge.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. So this week, let's like go to tactics. This week, I want you to just identify one moment where the not my job mentality showed up for you. And then think about it as a team or, within yourself, like how do we shift into a place of ownership? And so the first step is just identifying it. Like, is there a place that you just, maybe these things become a level of just complacency and create mediocrity in our companies, and they build, right? They're kind of like the silent killers. We talk about that a lot. Just like, this is a silent killer, and so sometimes we don't even catch it, but now we've outlined it. So take a second to just go, where is this showing up? Like, it's probably showing up within yourself. With like, where are you doing this? Because I think I've caught myself probably thinking it more than I've ever said it. And I've definitely caught myself thinking it more than I've ever heard our team say it. And I think sometimes for me, it's delegation. Like, I'm like, that's not my job. Instead of just being like, okay, I need to delegate this. Mm-hmm. And so, just see where it's showing up, and then ask yourself, how can you actually shift into ownership and being more owner minded, and like use some of these tools, write these tools down that Taylor just outlined, and then just think through it and think about like your training and look at that. So let's just take some time this week to actually shift into that. And I just want to reestablish or outline that ownership is contagious. And so be the one who spreads it, regardless of where you're at in the organization. I don't care if you're the one sweeping the floors. I don't care if you're the one at the top. Like, this starts with us. And if we want to live an impactful life, regardless of how toxic and how nasty, and I'm not saying do all the things and burn yourself out. If you're in an environment where they're not valuing you, then change it. Right? Then change it for yourself or make a change. Don't stay in blame in these organizations. Go find an organization that does want to value you and has a culture of ownership, and be the change that you want to see. That's so on brand for me. Yeah. I know, it's very corny.
You definitely have a t-shirt that says that.
I tell my kids that all the time. It's corny until it's not. Like,
be the change you want to see in the world.
You know what? We were not the change we wanted to see when we left the event. All messy. We left an event this week and it really impacted us both. I think we live by this, as corny as it is. So you're welcome. So, hopefully this was helpful for you guys. We want to hear from you. We want to know, where is this showing up in your business? Interact with us on all the social media platforms. Taylor, how can people get more involved if they're like, this was great, I'm still drowning?
Yeah. Impactinitiative.network. Find us there. Lots of resources. Also, that's how you can contact us. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Share your wins, how you deploy this, what's working. And then also, if you are struggling, can't figure out how to execute, then yeah, absolutely. Love to hear from people. So impactinitiative.network. And then lastly, if you are around, we still have our incredible in-person events happening. This month, they're going to be July 30th and July 31st in Littleton, Colorado. So if you're anywhere around the Denver area, I know lots of folks that listen are in Colorado. So make the drive, schedule the time, block it out. We'll have that information for those events in our show notes, but those are not to be missed. They're gaining momentum, and the people that are attending those events are so incredible. Business owners, entrepreneurs who are hungry for growth, who are ready to make connections, excited to flatten the learning curve and accelerate the growth of their businesses, and that's what we're here to do. And we want to welcome anyone who's hungry for that kind of growth. So again, that's July 30th and 31st. Look at the link in the show notes. And until then, we'll see you next time on Impact Minded.